December 6, 1941 was an auspicious date when world history was divided into before and after. For Pittsburgh's Jewish community, it was likewise a point of demarcation. On that day, Yud Zayin Kislev on the Hebrew calendar, Rabbi Mordechai Dov Altein was called into the Frierdiker Rebbe's office. Rabbi Altein, just 21, was being sent to the city of Pittsburgh. A shul in the Hill District, Anshe Lubavitch, had written asking for assistance. Their need was so great that he could not wait until after the annual Yud Tes Kislev for Brangen, 3 days away. His train was to depart the very next morning. The Rebbe had already replied to the letter. I am herewith sending one from amongst the choicest students of Tomchei Tmimim, who possess great talents. He is a superlative scholar and has a pleasant demeanor. When Rabbi Altein arrived in Pittsburgh the next day, he found the Rebbe's letter in a closet full of mail, unopened. Undeterred, Rabbi Altein wrote to Rabbi Yisrael Jacobson, his teacher and future father-in-law. On the 20th of Kislev, I went to the ladies' auxiliary, and I spoke to them a little bit about Yeshiva's Tomchei Tmimim in New York. I said that it was quite possible that we would start a yeshiva in Pittsburgh as well. The possibility quickly became a reality. By Erev Pesach, Rabbi Altein was renting temporary space on Murray Avenue and looking for a more permanent home for his after-school program. Following a move to Ward Street in South Oakland, he continued to recruit students in what was often a door-to-door effort. In 1943, he was joined by Rabbi Shalom and Mrs. Chaya Posner, who arrived with the mandate of expanding the afternoon program to become the first Achei Tmimim day school outside of New York City. Rabbi Posner, too, went house to house. His efforts yielded mixed results. Many simply shut the door in his face. Rabbi Kahas Weiss, who would go on to become a principal of Yeshiva, said his parents enrolled him primarily because they were impressed with Rabbi Posner's perseverance. Yeshiva found larger quarters on Dawson Street and started their inaugural year there with 5 students. They had 27 by year's end. The Dawson Street building was home for much of the 40s until the school moved to Ellsworth Avenue. Yeshiva also purchased a house on the corner of Whiteman and Hobart in Squirrel Hill. As the 60s began, former students became employees. Rabbi Kahas Weiss, an alum of the first class, returned to teach in 1961, the same year Rabbi Ephraim and Mrs. Miriam Rosenblum arrived as new staff members. Miss Kenny Posner, who'd watched her parents dedicate time and effort to growing yeshiva, began teaching at just 17, and after she married Rabbi Yecheskel Darren and started a family, she enrolled her own children in the school, among them their daughter Blumi. As yeshiva continued to grow in the 60s, they moved again to the larger Soho bathhouse on 5th Avenue. The school also renovated the house on the corner of Whiteman Street for their small and brand new girls' high school. Yeshiva was changed forever in 1975 with the Pittsburgh Public Schools strike. Rabbi Posner announced he would accept any child, and within weeks, 120 new students enrolled. Rabbi Yossi Rosenblum, a middle school student at the time, remembers that it changed the whole climate in the school. After the strike ended, some of the students returned to public school, but others remained. From then on, yeshiva was a larger school and would only keep growing. 3 years later, in 1978, Rabbi Yisrael and Mrs. Blumi Rosenfeld moved to Pittsburgh to work in the school's administration. It was not Mrs. Rosenfeld's first experience with yeshiva. Blumi Darren, before her marriage, Mrs. Rosenfeld was born into the school and had been a student through 11th grade. The Rosenfelds had their hands full right away with a rapidly growing school community. As more Balei Tshuva married and established families, they sought out locations in which to settle down. Many of them ended up in Pittsburgh. In the early 90s, with the school building bursting at the seams, the local federation began the Renaissance campaign. Spearheaded by Zev and Liba Rudolph, significant members of the school community, the funds raised helped yeshiva purchase the Denniston building for the girls and move their boys to Whiteman Street. In the years since, yeshiva has continued to grow and develop, welcoming new families, purchasing the new Greenfield campus, and restructuring under CEO and head of school Rabbi Yossi Rosenblum. Throughout it all, yeshiva remains indebted to the pioneers who shouldered the mission of this school and dedicated their lives and energies to welcoming any Jewish child seeking an education. Pittsburgh sits at the juncture of 3 rivers, historically an important place for strategic outposts for the military. For our founders, leaders, and educators, the city is also a crucial center, not of physical might, but of spiritual power. The Baal Shem Tov once asked Mashiach when he would arrive and was told, when the wellsprings of Chassidus spread outwards. Those wellsprings have, for the past 8 decades, flowed freely here from Yeshiva schools of Pittsburgh.